Well, welcome to another series of Tell Me a Story. I have here with me today Carol Melix Bess and her sister Vivian Melix Cushing. They have grown up in Sandwich and lived in Sandwich, and we're going to be talking about Sandwich in their recollections in the 20s, 30s, and 40s and beyond. Welcome, Carol. Welcome, Vivian. Perhaps we could start with your parents, who I understand actually grew up in Middleborough before they relocated to Sandwich, Vivian. Could you tell me a little bit about them?
Okay. My parents both grew up in Middleborough. Mm-hmm. My father's name was Leon Francis Melix, who was born in 1898. Mm-hmm. And my mother was Helen Stetz, S-T-E-T-S, who was born in 1900. My mother's parents were both German and came from Germany.
They did.
And met over here and married here. And my father's parents were mostly from Plymouth area.
And so they located
they were both from Middleborough, and they met and got married in September of 1923.
Do you know how they met?
How they met? Oh, well, they met. Well, first I better tell you about my dad. My dad's family moved out to Montana in 1914. They had an older daughter who lived out there and loved it and raved about it, so that they decided they'd go out there and homestead. So out they went after school ended in 1914.
And your dad was about?
And my dad had just finished 8th grade.
So he was about 15
He
or
was
so?
about 16 or so.
Okay.
And they stayed out there for about 4 years, but my grandfather was no rancher, and he didn't know how to really homestead. And so they came back. They sold most of their stuff out there, but they didn't have enough money for the whole family to come back on the train. So they left my father and his brother out there to finish up selling stuff, and then they were supposed to come home. But they had a very hard time selling stuff. Didn't get much money. They had a hard time coming home. So my father hitchhiked most of the way home. And he had some lovely stories to tell about what he did on the way home. How he worked for the circus for a while, and he worked on the Mississippi River boats for a while to earn money to come home.
Back.
Yeah. So he got home, evidently, about 1918. Oh, he got picked up a couple of times by the MPs because they thought he was a deserter from the war. The war was going on at that time.
Now,
anyway.
I'm interrupting just a little, but when your grandparents migrated over to America from Germany, Carol, you were telling me a story about that, the reason why they migrated over separately. Well, they didn't know each other then.
Mm-hmm. Well, the First World War was right behind them right there.
Yes.
And he decided he'd want to get out of there, I guess, and came to America.
Speak up louder.
Okay.
Yes.
Can you add
Speak
to
up
it?
louder.
Yeah. Can you add to that?
I think they can pick that up.
The census record says they came over in 1882.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, in Germany at that time, almost all the men had to serve some time in the army.
That was required.
Yes.
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 And the story was that my grandfather didn't want to serve in the army, and he left. I don't know if that's true or not.
Yeah. But there was a lot of discord and trouble at that time, and I think many people did migrate over then.
My grandmother was the youngest, I think, in her family, wasn't she?
I don't know. I don't know much about them.
Her father died, and of course, at that time, the usually it was the oldest son who inherited the whole farm.
Yes.
Because they were small and you couldn't divide them up and make a living out of them. So the oldest son, whose name was Richard, as I remember Mother telling us, inherited the farm. And so at that point, the rest of the family decided to move. And a couple of them came to this country. So then when their mother died, the rest of them came over to this country.
Yes, that is
And so
pretty
they had
typical,
family in this country. My grandmother had family in this country.
To
when
come
she
to,
came,
yes.
Yes.
So, your father finally made it back.
He finally
hitchhiked.
made it back. He went
On the train.
he finally made it back, got enough money to get on the train to come to New York City. Then he got on one of the Fall River line boats in New York City and came to Fall River. And then he hitchhiked from Fall River to Middleborough.
To back to his home at
And
that
back
point.
home, yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
yeah.
Somewhere along there, lately after that, he and a bunch of guys were going to the movies, and my mother and some of her friends was standing outside by the old fountain in Middleborough, waiting for the movie to begin, and they met up. And that's when Mom met Dad the first time. And he blew it.
Oh,
He
did.
he said to her, "Are you going to be at the birthday party next Saturday night?" And Mother said, "I don't know anything about a birthday party." It was supposed to be a surprise party for her.
Oh,
And this is her
no.
birthday, by the way. Today is her birthday.
Oh,
Isn't that
your
wonderful?
mother's birthday. Isn't
It's her
that wonderful?
birthday.
Isn't that something?
November 6th. And,
So he blew the surprise
yeah,
birthday
he blew
party.
the surprise. So I guess he was at the party.
Yeah.
They didn't start going together for another few years. I think they knew each other. And
Well, they were quite young then, too.
Hmm?
They were quite young then.
Well, no, they were what? 19, 18.
Oh,
Mother
okay.
would have been 18.
18, okay.
Yeah, and
all
Dad
right.
would have been
Uh-huh.
19 or 20. Yeah.
What prompted them, when they finally did get married, I'm assuming they stayed in Middleborough
They
for a
stayed
while?
in Middleborough, and then my dad took over the family home because after his mother died, she took care of all the finances, and the rest of the family were neglecting it,
Yeah.
and they were going to lose the house. So my father took over the house, and that's when we moved down to what street in Middleborough? Wood Street.
Wood
Yeah,
Street,
I
okay.
know.
Middleborough.
And stayed there for a while,
And stayed there for a while.
and then finally arrived
then-
in Sandwich.
Well, I was born in 25, and then my
1925.
sister Faye was born in 26, and then my brother Donald was born in 28. And we lived at the house in Wood Street. I have a few memories of it. My one big memory of that period was getting the vaccination.
Oh.
I can remember my dad, everybody had to go down to the town hall in Middleborough to get a vaccination.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, and my mother was carrying Faye, and my father was carrying me. I can remember that.
You can.
And going into this big room with all these people there. And then finally they called our names, and we went, and here was all these kids around. And I noticed that some kids would go into families would go into another room. When they come out, the kids were bawling away.
Oh,
One noise. I couldn't figure out what was going on.
What was going in that room? Yes.
But I
Yeah.
soon found out.
Yes.
I probably joined them, bawling. Anyway, I remember that.
How many children
And so,
did your parents have in total?
Oh,
9.
there's 9. so-
9. Yeah, I think you were going to say something, Carol, and I interrupted you.
Well, it was just it was a big job for poor Mom. I mean, 3 meals a day, and having to make half of it. I mean, sometimes we had fish chowders and things like that, and Dad would bring home the fish, you know,
Yes.
from his bar. And she'd have to have everything ready on time and everything, because we had places to go lots of times as we got older and all. And I don't know how she did it. She made bread, and we'd have bread and the nice syrup on it in the morning, you know.
That would be a
fried,
breakfast.
yeah, fried bread
Oh,
dough.
yes.
Remember that?
Yeah.
Yes.
And she had the washings to do, which she had
For 9
two-
children.
Yes, for 2 big wash tubs, and fill them with water, and then scrub with the scrub brush.
By hand.
Yeah, the scrub pan place there.
You neglected to tell her that we
And-
did not have electricity and running water and all that stuff.
And in the winter, the poor pump would get, so it wouldn't pump right, and it would be coughing and you know, making all this noise. So they would go down to the spring and get with pails and bring it up, get it on this big copper pan that was
That had handles?
lengthwise with
Yep.
handles, and put it on the old stove, black stove there, and heat that all up. Then scrub all this stuff, put it through the wringer, put it through the rinse, put it through the wringer again, hang it all out, and then at night iron.
Iron it.
And meals between. Now you
Yes.
tell me.
Yeah.
And I never heard her ever say, "I can't stand these kids, or get out of the house." Or, you know,
Yeah.
she was just lovely.
Yes.
I have to say that.
Now that was when you were living, when you finally did arrive in Sandwich.
Yes.
And you lived on Factory Street
Yes.
in Sandwich, down in what we call Jarvisville.
Yes.
So the water you were talking about that you would go down and get would be in the harbor or in by the marsh there, just sort of across from your street, would it be?
Yeah, be
From the
across the
spring
street.
Yes.
that was down there.
There
Yes.
was a
Yeah.
beautiful spring.
Yes.
Yeah, and I don't know how she did it. I really don't. 9 kids.
So what did your father do for a living?
Well, after he came home from Montana, he did a lot of work in the woods, clearing woods for people who wanted to clear their woodlands, and cutting wood for people who burned wood and all. He did that for a while, and he did he finally ended up, before we moved, working for the West, I have to say this correctly, West Bridgewater Brickyard.
Ah,
And there was a family that lived near my mother that she knew very well. Their name was Ambrault, and they were French-Canadian people who had come down to work in the shoe factories in Middleborough. And one of them was a man named John, who, when he grew up, left Middleborough and came to Sandwich to work on the fishing boats
ah.
at the canal. Remember the big
Well, a big fishing fleet.
freezer, fishing
Yes,
freezer that was there. and
the
all that.
freezer plant,
He
yes.
came there.
Uh-huh.
And there was another room, house there, where they could sleep. Some of these fishermen
Okay.
who were not natives of the town could sleep, and there was a kitchen there where somebody cooked for them and all. So that's where John ended up. But John met a young girl from Sandwich and fell in love and got married. And I guess she wanted him to quit the fishing. So he started lobster fishing.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And
Like
my-
your dad.
Yeah, and so my father and John's brother Louis used to come down every once in a while and go fishing, and they would come home on a weekend, and they would come home with clams and quahogs and crabs and lobster and fish and everything. And it evidently impressed my dad. It's there for the taking.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so that somewhere along the line he decided
He
he'd
decided.
move and do that.
And do that
he,
himself.
He was an outdoor man. He loved being outdoors.
So the Embrols, who we knew in Middleborough, who eventually settled in Sandwich.
In Sandwich, yeah.
And we'll talk about where they settled.
Well, John and his wife lived right next door to where we lived.
Okay.
In the next house. And I think maybe the fact that our house came up for rent at that particular moment might have had some influence on my dad too.
Yes. So we initially rented your house.
Yeah,
on Factory.
Yes, we rented our house on Factory
But when
Street.
she came down,
Such as it was.
when she came down, she said I could have cried. She
Your mother?
Said, yeah, when she looked at that house, there were burdocks right up to the door, everything, all grown.
It had evidently been empty for
some time. Yeah.
Yeah, and I suppose it was cheaper, so Dad got it, but she worked hard on it.
Yeah.
She always had all her
It must
flowers.
have had something
around.
going for it that she stayed there all of the rest of her life, really.
Yeah.
And actually, your daughter Laurie, your niece, still lives there.
Well, they pulled the old one down.
Yes.
They said they had to. They said the Board of Health wouldn't let it.
Yes.
And so they built up a new one almost on the same footprint.
Yes.
And except that she put an other L on it and whatnot.
Got electricity.
Yeah, she got electricity. So when you first moved in there, and as the children came along, there were 3 that came down from Middleborough, if I understand. But then there were 6
and all
others.
The rest were born at home.
At home, on that house in Factory Street. When the rest of you came along, at some point, they purchased the house.
After the war, I should say we had a very wonderful landlord. Didn't know him, but his name was Anceloni, and he came from Sagamore.
Yes, the Ancelonis. Yes, that's from Sagamore.
But when Mother couldn't pay her $3 a week rent, when the rent collector came, he just let it go.
Sure.
He just carried her on. I suppose he couldn't throw out a family of 7 or 8 kids.
His name would be Mud.
He was wonderful.
Yes.
Yeah.
That he never complained, and somehow we got through it. And of course, in those days, I forgot to say that shortly about 3.5 weeks after we moved into the place, the stock market crashed. It was October 29th.
Yes.
So the hard
times
set in.
really set in at that point. Yes.
Although I think we people living in a town like Sandwich had it much easier than those folks who lived, say, in the city, where men lost their jobs and there was nothing to replace it. And at least in the country here, we could plant gardens and all that. Yeah, we had a hard time, but we never went hungry. Never went hungry. My dad caught the fish in his lobster pots, and if it had any size to it, he brought it home, and if we couldn't use it, there was always a neighbor next door
that could use it. Yeah. Now, did he sell some of his fish and lobsters, or was it mostly
he sold his lobsters. That was his business.
That was his business. Yes. Yeah.
And don't ask me who was buying lobsters in the middle of a depression. But
well, they probably weren't $48 a pound like they are now.
They were probably all of $1 a pound at that point, and that was high.
Now, did you go out with your father to fish and/or lobster? Did you? Did the boys?
I went once or twice, I think.
Yeah.
And we'd get up early in the morning, 5 or something, and we would see the sun coming right up out of the water. That was just wonderful.
Yes.
And he'd show us all the fish and the crabs and things as they came out. And we'd bring our lunch. Mama would make that up so that we could go out.
So you'd eat that in the boat?
Yeah. And yes, I remember those
You remember doing that? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Well, growing up in that area, it was a very small, close area. People knew each other.
Yes.
They helped each other out. Who were some of your neighbors, if you could mention some of your neighbors that you grew up with?
Well, Mr. Montague owned the house, well, to the left.
Okay, as
It
you're
was
looking
to the
at
right,
your house.
and then, anyway.
Yep.
Parsonen, John Parsonen.
Yes,
owned
the
other little one.
Parsons, and they were Finnish, and she taught Mother how to make socks and gloves, you know,
Oh.
mittens and things.
Yes.
And she was nice, but we had the blind woman.
Oh, the house next door that Mr. Tommy Montague
Yes,
owned
Montague.
was an
Yes.
old house that had been built for the sandwich glass factory.
Yes, as many of them
and
were.
And they had, I don't know whether they used it as a boarding house at one time or not. But,
Yes,
but
they
when we
did.
lived there,
They did.
it was sectioned off into 3 apartments.
Mm-hmm.
And in one of the apartments, there were, Mrs. Buckley lived. Mrs. Buckley
Oh,
and
yes.
her blind daughter, Belle.
Yes, Belle
Yeah.
Buckley
Yes,
was
yes.
blind, yes.
Yes, they
Yeah.
lived in one
I think she was
section.
15, something like that, when she went blind.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
But Mama would bring her over whenever she was making any lobster salads or anything, and tell her, "Don't make anything. I've got supper for you."
Oh,
So she'd go over, and she'd go over there and sit with her, even with the lights all off. You know, it'd be
Yes.
black, dark.
Yes,
Uh,
yes.
Yeah.
I know Frank. We lived over there when we first got married, Frank and I, to save
You did.
money.
In the
Yeah.
house, yeah.
And we'd go over and knock on the door and whatnot, and she'd be in there ironing away in the dark. And Frank said, "They turn on the light." She said it gave him such a funny feeling to know that she's in there.
Yes.
all
But of
in the
course,
dark.
being
She couldn't-
blind,
yeah.
it didn't make a difference to
Yeah,
her.
so
Now
she's-
that house is still, and as you're saying, when you were first married to your husband,
Mm-hmm.
your now husband Frank, you lived in that house. Now
Yeah.
that house is still there, is it not?
Yes, it is.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a couple. It's actually one house down from the house. Now, one house down from the house that you grew up in on Factory Street. Yes. Yeah, it still is. I
Yeah.
think sort of a boarding house.
When I was growing up, the family that lived in the middle apartment were the Quirks.
Adele Quirk.
Adele Quirk.
and Paul Quirk. yeah.
Yes.
Adele was the only one there for so much of the time, and we played with Adele quite often. She was kind of a spoiled little kid, and I can remember at Christmas time we'd always go over to. She'd come over and see our Christmas tree and what we
Yeah.
got, and we'd go over there. And she always had umpteen more things on the tree than we ever did. And
Yes.
How can Santa bring her so many things? My mother used to explain to me, well, she's the, you know, she was the next generation coming up, and she had all of these relatives down there in your section.
Yes,
and,
that could-
and they all made of Adele, and anyway, we were fighting one day, and the next day we were good friends, and then we'd go skating out on the big puddle in between our houses there. We'd go out
Yeah.
skating and sliding on the land across the street.
Did you play in the park that's right at the corner of Factory
Yeah.
and Jarvis?
We
What?
played softball.
The park.
Oh,
at
yes,
the, at
we
the corner.
play
Yes.
at the park.
Softball.
Usually, we
And then the
played
town-
baseball at the park.
Yeah, the town made a big roller skating area.
Oh, they
there.
did?
It was all cement. It's still
Oh.
there. And we used to skate all the time on that.
Oh my
I
gosh!
think
sure.
we were out in the
We always
road
had
so
our
most
roller
of the
skates
time.
in the family, didn't we?
Yeah, yes,
Yeah.
the metal roller
several
skates.
pairs of roller
yeah.
skates, yeah.
Yeah. So you roller
They
skated.
belong to all of us.
Well, that's something to grow up in a large family like you did. You mentioned about riding your bike to me before we started with this interview, and I'd like to hear that story. But I got thinking, you probably didn't have 9 bikes. You probably had
no.
to share.
No.
Yeah.
I never had a bike.
Leona had one, and she would go down to the Mr. Gibbs's house, you know, to get the milk, and I wanted to so bad, so she let me. She taught me, you know, let me ride the bike so I could learn and all, and I'd go down far some of the time.
Could you tell me about Mr. Gibbs? He lived on George's Rock Road, did he? Yes.
I don't know how many horses he had or cows, but they were wonderful. The big workhorses, you know.
Yeah, yes, yeah.
Big feet on them and everything, clump, clump.
I think you had a story about him using the horses back in the day to clear the roads of snow.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, let's see, I had something in my mind and it's gone now.
Now, did you have, with 9 children, did you have chores that you had to do to help your mother and father?
Not that I know of.
No, huh?
No.
Yeah.
But we would go, you know, we'd go after wild grapes.
Oh.
And we'd walk down the tracks. And out in back of, what's that little restaurant there? Captain Scott's.
Oh, yes.
Over on the other side of the tracks, way in there, there were loads of
wild
grapes.
grapes. Oh, boy.
And they grew up all over the branches and the trees and the bushes. And we'd get up on there and jump up and down. We'd have a wonderful time. But we all had our little baskets too, and Mom would have the wooden ones that Dad put the fish in. What do you call those? Baskets. Well, anyway, you'd have to crawl on your hands and knees to get down under lots of times and pick all these grapes. They were just loaded.
And did she make probably jelly?
Grape jelly.
Grape
Yeah.
jelly,
Yeah,
yes.
when she got home,
Yeah.
she'd make grape juice
And grape juice.
and
grape-
grape jelly.
Yeah.
And see, when we got home, we could go out and play and whatnot, but she had to all clean all those grapes and then wash them all. And the next day she'd make her jellies and things. But see, she never stopped.
It doesn't sound like she did.
We went after blueberries too, and she'd can those all up, and in the winter have nice blueberry pies.
Yeah.
She made all the things.
Vivian, did you have, I hear that, but there was some age separating you.
Well,
Did you have chores?
I was the oldest one in the family, of course, and with the what we call the role model now, you know. I thought I was being put upon when I had to do anything, but
Yeah.
Faye and I used to have to help with the ironing, especially the straight things that weren't, and ironed everything in those days.
Sure.
The ironing. We had to help with using the wringer when
Oh,
she
sure,
washed,
when you
if
washed
we
the
were home.
clothes,
If
yep.
we were home. And I quite often had to just kind of keep my eye on the younger brothers and
Yeah.
sisters.
I would
being
imagine,
the young-
yes.
yeah. And sometimes I would have to, in the evening, if I would have to come in, well, the rest of you are all playing Red Rover, come over, with the neighbors. She'd call me and I'd have to rock the baby to sleep in the old rocking chair.
And she took us all to the beach too.
And I'd
She
have to,
was always the one.
after I could swim pretty good, I was allowed to take all the younger ones to the beach.
To the beach,
But they had to mind me or they couldn't go again.
Oh,
No,
sure.
they had
That
to
was a big
mind me.
responsibility,
Yeah,
really,
And
when
of
you
course,
think of it.
Of course, we were all of us had our turn with the rite of passage down there, jumping off the bridge.
Jumping
you
off
know.
Oh, dear.
Yeah, that's
It's
generational.
surprising how many times you see that picture of the bridge in the paper.
In the paper.
Even now.
Yes.
Even now. It
Yeah.
must be 6 or 7 times a year you see it
Yes.
somewhere.
And
Yeah.
when it was low tide, you could walk up to a place that was deeper, and we called it Crab's Nest.
Yeah.
And all the kids would play there, and some of the boys were throwing mud at us and whatnot. But anyway, we spent a lot of time there. And then I don't think they had a ladder at that time on the bridge, and we'd have to get up on it, and we would lay our towels out on the boardwalk and
Yeah.
lay there. And people walking by, all you could see with legs and feet, you know. But it was fun.
Yeah, that was great fun. Yeah, I'm not so certain that the kids or the children are doing it nowadays, of course, realize that this is generations did that back. Yes, yeah.
And it was wonderful when around August there was northeast wind, and it would blow in the warm current into the the bay,
Uh-huh.
and the waves would be really big for us kids, you know,
Yes.
and all. And we just
Well-
it was a playground for us, really.
Did you float down Mill Creek?
Did we what?
Did you float down Mill Creek?
No, I never did.
No,
No.
they didn't, because there was the blue, what are those crab, those shells there. All the,
Horseshoe crabs?
no, the blue.
So it was sort of
Blue
dangerous.
crabs?
Hmm?
The blue-shelled crabs?
Yeah, they're not crabs, no. They're shellfish.
Oh,
They eat them now, but we never ate them.
oh, the
then.
razorbacks? Yeah.
Scalpin? Scalpin?
Well,
I'll
whatever.
think of it.
So that's we'll figure that.
Mussels?
But mussels.
There we go. There we go.
Mussels everywhere. There was no sand at all, and they
Oh, yes.
cut your feet.
Yeah,
so
and you
we
would cut
never
your-
did that much. But since the water's been warmer, they're all dying in there.
Yes.
you know.
Yeah.
And we can swim from the creek, from where it comes in,
Sure.
all the way up to the bridge. And we ladies in our 80s are still doing it.
Are you still? Good for
Yeah.
you.
Oh,
Yes.
But
I
the
think the
water's
local
been
paper
awful
ought to
cold.
write them up.
So you
Bunch
have a
kid-
group of
guys and
ladies
girls that go, yeah.
that
Yeah.
still swim from Old Harbor through
Yeah.
up to the
Yeah,
to the
we did
boardwalk.
this year.
Can you
but-
tell me the ladies that do that?
Well, there's Barbara Gates,
Barbara Morrow Gates.
yes, and there was Norma Young,
Persons.
Persons,
Okay.
okay,
Yeah.
and Carol Taylor.
Okay.
had
Yes.
For this year she didn't go.
Okay.
She had right up until then.
That would be Carol Morrow. Yep.
Yes, and Shay Thomas Johnson,
Oh my gosh.
and
Margie.
yeah, Margie, my sister Margie, who's 84 now,
Yeah.
85. Over there in Germany right now, sailing the Danube somewhere.
Oh really?
Oh dear, and Laurie, my daughter.
Your daughter
Laurie,
Laurie. Yeah.
So.
Isn't that wonderful?
But
Yeah.
this year I found it kind of hard because we would float kind of slow, and you'd get too cold.
Yes.
You
mhm.
know, when we were younger, we had a little more flesh on our bones.
Yeah. Perhaps. Yeah.
How do you get out when you get to the bridge?
Good question.
Well, we walked the back of the beach and just get on the boardwalk and bring it.
I mean, get out of the water when you're sailing down the creek. When you get out of the water, how do you do it at
We
the bridge?
just walk. Oh.
Do you use the?
You can
big-
touch
big-
part of the.
Big muddy sides to the thing. How do you do it? Besides getting dirty.
We do it. We've lost some of our shoes sometimes in that mud.
Oh dear.
Oh, my
People
God.
all looking at That's the hardest part, getting on a
Getting-
bathing suit and
getting
going
out.
anymore
Yeah,
in front
yeah.
of these people at our age.
Oh, I think it's wonderful.
Oh, it is wonderful.
I
It
think
is
it's
We have
wonderful.
fun, you know.
Getting back to growing up in that lovely area of the old glass factory, I imagine as you were growing up, there were still some buildings left, still some old brick buildings of the glass factory remaining. Do you remember that?
I remember the big brick building that was down there along the shore of the creek that was there. The creek we used to
The
call
creek,
it.
yeah.
Wasn't that a
Creek.
fish place?
It was first the part of the sandwich glass factory that they used to package stuff and get it ready to put in the ships.
Okay.
Because at first they took this glass to Boston in a ship before the railroad came in.
Yeah.
And when we were kids, there was a great big iron anchor down there. I mean big.
Yes, huge.
Have seen pictures of it?
No, I have
don't have a
not.
picture of that either.
But you remember it
But
very clearly.
I remember it, yes.
Yeah.
Very, very big. And then one day, about 1937 or so, we came home and it was gone, and the big kettles were gone.
Oh,
Some
someone?
group came along and took it, and it was during the war when Japanese went into China, and I forgot which side took them. I think the Japanese got the kettles and things. They were
Really?
using it for ammunition.
Ammunition to
Yeah,
break it down
yeah.
and use it for ammunition? Wow.
And of course, the story was that we got some of it back too. Yeah. Yeah.
Carol, you had a great story about the sandwich glass time after the sandwich glass factory closed down, of course, but there were still some buildings left, as Vivian's saying.
Mother always told us, "Don't you dare go in there.
Don't,
Yeah.
yes.
You dare, you stay
I
out
would
of
think
there."
that,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, but,
Well, it might be sort of dangerous.
at one point, and I forgot what year it was, it must have been 34 or 35, there was some kind of a symposium or something at the glass factory where a lot of people who, especially collectors of sandwich glass,
Oh, yes.
had meetings, etc. And we kids used to go down across the street and dig up pieces of glass and everything, and we'd sell it to some of these people who were interested in the different colors.
Oh,
and
sure.
sometimes you could identify what it's a piece of broken glass, but
What it
you
was
could
from?
identify what it might have been.
Sure.
And they would, give you a nickel or a dime for this piece and all. That's how I earned my first money.
Was it really?
Yeah.
Selling-
You've got my picture in the paper that time
No,
too.
sir.
We kids had a little cardboard box with our things on it.
Selling them,
There.
yeah, for 5 cents a piece.
Yeah, selling our wares.
When we didn't know what to do, Mother would give us some little trowels and pails, and we'd go dig treasure.
Dig
you know.
treasure,
Yeah.
And
yes.
we did.
There were
I-
several places we could go down
Yeah,
there, weren't
yeah.
there?
Yeah.
And I remember the one place Gerald Karen was digging, and he dug up the crucifix, and it was just down the bottom, a little bit broken, but
Yeah.
the whole crucifix was,
What
full.
color was it?
And it was a light blue.
Light blue.
And why couldn't I have
You
found
so wish that you had found it. Yes. Yeah. Now, Jerry Karen, that would have been Mr. Edgar Karen's son,
Yes.
and they lived on Harbor Street.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, and they were the first ones in town, pretty much, that got the TV.
Oh.
And so they would ask us to come over if we wanted to in the evening and watch, like, what's that woman's name there now? Oh dear. But anyway, we would leave the place at 9 o'clock.
Their house.
Yes.
Yeah.
And run like the wind for home, because the wind would blow through that factory and all that tin, and it was scary.
Oh yes, the noise. Yeah, yeah. You had a story about Charles Parks and the glass factory and some of the glass that he found in apparently one of the buildings that was left up. Remember that story?
Well, he told us
Yes,
that
yes.
they would get into the big barrels that had hay in between these dishes, and they would sling them out over the creek there.
Yeah.
And I've always wanted to go across this and start digging in
And
there.
start digging in the creek. Yes, yeah, yeah. There was some sandwich glass apparently that they left behind after the factory closed for some
Yes.
period of time. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Let's talk about your family members. Well, first let's talk about you growing up in Sandwich, and then we'll talk about some of your family members. You both went to H.T. Wing School.
I started in 1930, September of 1930.
First grade.
First grade with Mrs. Gannon was our teacher.
Yeah.
And I can remember the kids in the second grade always say, "Oh, wait till you get to the second grade, you'll have Miss Newcomb. She's a crabby old thing," and all this stuff. Poor Miss Newcomb. When we got to finally got to second grade, but she was always very, very nice to me.
Yeah.
Always very sweet to me.
Now, was
And
that
I shall always bless her, because I was not reading too well, and she sent home, she found out I didn't go to the library, and so she sent home a note to my mother asking if she could take me to the library one day and set me up, and
Sure.
so she did. And I can still close my eyes and see us walking down the street there by the Champagne, you know, going to the library. This great big tall, rather not nice looking woman she was, and little me going to the library. But she did set me up at the library.
She certainly had your best interests
Yes,
at heart.
she did.
Yes.
She was always sweet to me,
Yeah.
and I bless her, because I've been a reader ever since. I love to read.
Mrs. Gannon, now was that the Gannon family that lived on State Street?
Yes.
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 Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. She had a beautiful daughter, whose name was what?
Rita.
Rita.
Nancy.
Yeah.
Yes.
Rita.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Any other favorite teachers?
third grade was Mrs. Towns, and I can remember third grade was where you learned multiplication table. Oh dear! And you got stars when each person got a star on their page when they learned a certain one.
Carol, did you have Mrs. Gannon, or had she left by
Yes,
then? You did.
I did.
Uh-huh.
But you had Mrs. Snow, did you, for second
Yes.
grade?
Oh, you had
She
Mrs.
was my
Snow was a
favorite.
lovely lady.
Yes.
Everybody
Yes.
loved Mrs. Snow.
Yes.
Yeah.
And she taught us a lot on art, you know,
Ah.
things on art
Uh-huh.
that she did,
Yeah.
you know.
And our fourth grade teacher was Mrs. Tangney, who was what? The daughter of one of the famous glass makers, glass blowers, Edward. Anyway,
Yeah.
lived down in East Sandwich in the house that, the television man.
Tom Ellis.
Tom Ellis
Yes.
lived in, yeah.
At the
That-
corner
yeah.
of Spring Hill Road
Yeah,
and
in
6A.
the
Yes, that rather
Spring
large
Hill,
house.
yeah.
Yeah.
And my fifth grade teacher was Mrs. Dalton, who lived across the back of the station there in that yellow house. She was very nice. And then everybody thought, oh, wait till you get to sixth grade and you get Mr. Tangley for your teacher. But lo and behold, Mr. Tangley retired just then, and so there was a new teacher. And that was Owen B. Cannon, whom you probably
yes.
have heard.
Oh,
Yep.
sure. Yes.
He taught sixth grade for a number of years before he became principal. I had him in high school too. I used to babysit for him on Sundays.
He went quite high in education in Massachusetts.
Yes.
He ended up
Yeah, we ended up in Washington, D.C.
actually in Washington, D.C. in some sort of big
Yeah.
education job. Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
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 Great.
I ran into him in Osterville after he retired and bought a house in Centerville.
Mm-hmm.
And I was in my bank one day, and there was this man standing in front of one of the places there, and I said, that looks like him. And so when we went outdoors, he was standing quite close to me, so I went over to him and spoke to him, and it was him.
And it was him.
Yeah, yeah.
Did he recollect you?
Yes, he did.
Oh, isn't that
In fact,
nice?
I got a hug and a kiss.
Oh, isn't that nice? Yeah.
He remembered, huh?
Now,
Yeah.
in school,
He was very nice.
where school, and I've talked to other people that we've had this tell me a story, and we've chatted about the school and how it provided a lot of social activities
Yes.
for the children. Can you talk about that a little? What the school might have provided for you in terms of social? Perhaps that would be in sports. Perhaps it would be in other things. Did you play? Were there sports in the high school when you were there? Did the girls have sports? Any kind of
Oh,
sports?
yeah.
There was only
Yeah.
one sport for girls, and that was basketball. When I went.
We had softball in the spring, and Mr. Zion did a lot for us because he was my first sixth grade teacher when he first came in and all. And I think we were in 7th and 8th grade, and he started taking us to Bourne and to Mashpee to play. And we were
Oh.
learning the game, you
Yes,
know, when
yes.
we were younger, so that when we got to high school, we could, we knew the rules and
How to do?
regulations
Yes.
and all.
Yeah.
So, it was wonderful because I just loved the sports.
Yes, you did. Yeah.
Yeah. And we had to play against Barnstable for the what do you call it?
Championship? Or
Yes,
Yes.
the championship. Yes, and I remember my father and mother came to that game.
Oh boy.
Now that was the first one they'd ever seen us play.
Oh.
And Mr. Zion had taught us how to fake one way or the other. And my father started raving about us when I got home. You made her look fool. She didn't know if she was coming to go.
He was complimenting you.
Yeah. Well, he couldn't have come all the while before our game.
Sure.
No.
Did you win the championship?
Yes,
Well,
we
there
did.
you go.
We
So
did.
he came to the important one.
And Miss Nahubian, who had been a teacher, was the coach for Barnstable.
For Nahubian,
For many
for
years,
for Barnstable, yes.
Yeah. She said, "How many more are there at home?" every game after me, Arlene, and then Pootie.
Yeah. She didn't want any more
No,
Melixes playing.
no.
When Jenny was there in school there, she was still there coaching.
In Barnstable.
Yes.
She found out Jenny's mother was a Melix. She perked up. We weren't too good when I played.
So it was the younger Melixes that.
Yeah, it was that younger group.
Yeah.
I was playing on one of the games there, Mr. Zion. When I practiced, I was doing hook shots, And Mr. Zion says, "I want you to do one in this game." And I said, "I don't want to do that. That's like
You just do it automatically, right?
Well, no, but it made you look like you're showing off,
Oh.
And so I didn't want to do it. And he said, "I want you to do it the second time." So I went, "All right, you won." I went, "Nope." And whoosh. I was like this. And everybody was clapping. The kids were hugging me.
Good shot.
Yes. But I never tried it again.
Oh, you didn't.
I won.
Well, you're going to stop when you're ahead. That's
Well, I know Pootie had a write-up once. Pootie could stand in the middle of the court and swish it in.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah,
Pootie,
Pootie
just for who was explain who Pootie
Pauline.
is.
She's Pauline, the youngest one of the family.
Your
Yeah.
youngest
Yeah,
sister.
she had a lot to live up to. In one of the write-ups they called her the fabulous Pauline Melix. Oh dear.
Oh, but it was fun.
I gave her
It was
that
fun.
clipping when she was here this last summer.
Wonderful memories, wonderful stories.
Oh yeah. Well, they say you were brought up in the Depression and we were poor. Mother always said, "Thank God for the people who gave us things because we never would have made it if she hadn't."
Yes.
Yeah.
And some of the things we had to wear weren't all that great. Well, they didn't always fit quite right, and they certainly weren't always the color you liked. But
Yeah.
We never went to
if
the...
your shoes wore out, Dad fixed them, and if
Yeah.
the roof leaked, Dad get up there and fixed it, and if it needed painting, he painted
painted
it.
it.
And
Yeah.
that was the way it was in those
Yes.
days.
Yes.
You did it or you went without.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, in
But we
terms-
didn't know any different, and
You
of course
didn't-
there were so many other families in the neighborhood living the same way.
living the same way.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. It was not
it
easy
wasn't.
times.
But I always said I'm glad I got rid of that poor part of my life early. I got nowhere to go but up. And my husband took very good care of me.
But we were always healthy, and if we had something wrong, Dad would just wrap it up with something and it would heal.
So you don't recollect going to the doctor that often even?
Oh no,
Oh,
not-
never.
Never. Uh-huh.
You'd see the doctor once a year at the school when they had
Like a
every year,
clinic?
everybody had
Yeah.
the doctor
That
and
was the first
and
time
the
I
dentist,
saw the
yeah.
doctor.
Yeah.
But you didn't go to the dentist unless you were writhing on the floor in pain,
Sure. Yeah.
And then you were
So,
lucky if you got there then. But
so at the clinics that the school provided, you had hearing tests, you had
Yes.
eye tests.
yes,
Of course, you had your polio shot.
Yeah, and you got weighed. And
You got weight. So
Yeah.
they really, the school really did take over some of the
And
responsibilities.
they let the family know if there was
Sure,
something wrong.
sure, yes,
And,
yeah. Now, how about some of the stores back then that maybe aren't here anymore? Did you ever like walk uptown?
Well, I kind of had to go do the shopping now and then because my mother was home with a bunch of kids. And there was the Russell's Market there, and then later there was what was it that was up?
A&P was up.
A&P, way
It
up,
was.
but what was it, First National that Alfred Hoy had
I'm
in
not sure.
the next to the drugstore?
In the block? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was A&P, I thought.
No, the A&P was way up,
Okay.
right at the corner of.
And the drugstore.
In the
Yes,
drugstore.
We stopped for ice cream, and she was working there. At
Oh, you
that
worked
time.
in the drugstore.
I worked at the drugstore for a couple of years.
What did you do in the drugstore, Vivian?
Oh well, whatever, everything but mixed drugs.
Whatever was needed.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, yeah. Did you
It
work behind the
Soda
was
pop.
the soda
fountain?
fountain?
Of course.
Oh,
yeah.
that was a
I
good
can-
job.
I can remember the first time that some guy came in from New York and he asked me, he said he wanted a cabinet, and I didn't know what that was.
Yeah,
I can remember that.
because that's
It's a frap,
called
yeah,
a
it's like a
frap here.
frap, yeah.
They called it a cabinet, yes.
Oh, a cabinet then.
Carol, did you work in any of the shops or anything in town as you got a little older?
Well,
I'm asking Carol whether she worked in any shops.
well, not in the shops.
No.
No.
Okay.
I did work at the Blue Shutters there as a waitress.
Okay.
This is, what was her name?
Cahoon. Cahoon?
Well, I worked for the Cahoons also. I washed dishes there. And, and that was in the 7th grade. Then 8th and 9th grade, I think I worked at the Crow Farm.
Oh, Crow Farm.
And
Yeah.
then after that, I washed dishes and I waitressed until I got out of school.
Yes.
And then when I graduated, I went to the electric company, Cape and Vineyard.
Oh, sure.
And
at that-
worked there.
Yep.
And she worked at Cape and Vineyard before me, so they knew her. And
Yeah. So they were able to hire you too. So that was good. So you both worked there. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, when I graduated in 1942, because the war was on then, and a number of the older boys who were in school, especially those who were not doing too well, quit and joined up the service. There were 21 in my class, 10 girls and 11 boys. And lo and behold, I got a scholarship.
Oh.
It was the third one. And actually, it really wasn't mine. It really belonged to one of the boys, but they were not going to be going to college.
Yes.
So I got it, thank goodness. It helped immensely. It was only $100. Can you imagine?
That was a lot of money in those days, though. Yes.
But I went down to the secretarial school in Hyannis, and that was set up as a 2-year course. And everybody, it was a very small thing. Everybody went according to their own speed. And you had to get 98% right before you went on to the next thing. But I had taken a business course in school because I knew I was not going to get to college. So I knew all the basics. So it only took me a year to get through to gain speed and accuracy and that sort of thing. And then I got a job at, they needed a girl at Cape and Vineyard, and they came to the school, as they quite often did, looking for help. And they sent me, and I went, and I got the job. So I stayed there until I got married. I liked it there, Cape and Vineyard and Hyannis.
I'd like to ask each of you, maybe we'll start with Carol. How did you meet your husband?
how did I meet my husband?
Come on, Carol.
I had been up
Is this a good
skating
story?
on the pond.
Oh.
I had been up skating on the pond, it was a lot of fun. There was other kids, you know, and boys, and they had made a big bonfire up there, and we
This
were
is Shawn
standing around.
Pond.
Yes, on
Yes.
Shawn Pond.
Yep.
And we got to talking to some boys who were from the base,
Ah.
and they said, "Want to go down to Freddy's and get hot chocolate?" They wanted to meet us girls better, and so we were up there talking away in the little booths that they had, and Thelma Embralt was waiting on us and all, and in comes Frank, and he was from the ship.
Yeah,
I can't
yeah,
think
yeah,
of
yeah,
the
yeah.
boat anyway.
He was on a ship. Okay.
Yes,
Yep.
down there at the basin.
Yep.
And he came in, and he looked over, and he said, I kept looking at this girl, and then he said, something said, she's going to be my wife.
Oh my.
He said, me? You know, that's what came to his mind. And so I had broken up with a boyfriend before, and so he asked Thelma, you know, who's that girl over there? Is she going with anybody and all this? When he found out I wasn't going with anyone, then he asked Thelma and Jimmy, could we go out together, you know, double date and go to the movies? And I said to myself, free movies?
I'm up for that. So where was the movie? Where did you go to the movie?
Hyannis.
Hyannis, okay.
And I'm afraid, I kept waiting thinking they're going to go to the first show. And I'm on the piano just pounding away and thinking, I'm going to just leave. I mean, here it got to be 9 o'clock, you know.
Oh.
They came and we
Thought you
went
just
to the
stood
second,
up.
went to the second show anyway, and that's how I met him.
And that's how it started. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep. How nice.
He
Yeah.
was in the crash boats, that's what
Crash
I
boat,
wanted
Oh
to say.
yes.
And
Yeah.
stationed down there.
Yes.
And yet he was in the Air Force, but they had him on the Navy boat, and he was a radio
Technician.
technician
Yes.
of some sort.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Vivian, how did you meet your husband?
Well, during the war, I was belonged to the Junior Service Volunteers, the girls that went and danced with the guys.
Oh.
Yeah. It later became USO girl. Yeah. And I had almost 5 years of that, and it was wonderful. Very good learning experience, meeting all these guys from all different parts of the country, and
Sure.
all different walks in life, and all that. And there were a couple of them that were really important to me, but off they went to war. So anyway, when the war was over and the base closed in March 1946, I think they closed in 46. Things were pretty quiet and around and everything. And so one day my girlfriend, who was going with a boy from Marston's Mills, asked me if I wanted to go out with a guy who was a friend of her friends. And so we had a blind date, and off we went. The guy went to pick my husband up. His name's Wilbur. He went to Wilbur's house to pick Wilbur up for this date, and Wilbur's laying on the couch in his dirty clothes reading the paper. He decided he wasn't going to go. So I almost got stood up before it started.
Oh.
Here I am sitting at home waiting for him to go play the piano.
Both of you playing the piano. Yes.
And finally they came. And of course at that time, by the time they got there, they had to go down to Cumberquid to pick up my girlfriend Jenny. And by the time they got the sandwich, it was too late to go to the movies. And of course we girls were all dressed up, so they didn't want to go roller skating, and they didn't want to go bowling. And so finally they went to a lounge that had a little 3-piece band playing.
Do you remember where?
Huh?
Do you remember where?
No, I don't remember.
Okay.
I should remember that, shouldn't
Okay.
I? That's important. But anyway, but Wilbur couldn't dance. All he had was, and he didn't really impress me too much. He was very quiet. I thought he was pretty good looking. He was tall and slim and had a lovely head of hair and bright blue eyes. Rather quiet and didn't say much, so he didn't really impress me much. But we decided we'd go out the following Thursday to the Elks Club dance with Ginny and Bud. And that got to be it for almost, what was to follow? We'd go out to the Elks Club dance on Thursday and Saturdays. We clicked, and we started going together. That was in September of 1946.
Yeah.
And in January for my birthday, I got a ring. And anyway.
And you settled in...
Two left feet, but that was all right. He had other good qualities.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you settled in Marston's Mills.
Yeah, he was building a house at that time.
Yeah.
I decided, well, he's got a pretty good work ethic. He was getting up early in the morning and going to work down at his house for a couple of hours before he went to work. He was a mason. And he worked for his stepdad, who was a mason contractor. There was a lot of work going on at that point after the war when all of the veterans were building houses. And so the following September 21st, 1947, we got married at the Sandwich Federated Church there.
Yeah.
And he brought me home to our little Cape Cod cottage.
And is that the same
Carried
house
me
that
right
you...
over the threshold.
And that's the same house that you're...
The same
that you
house
brought your
that I'm
children
in now.
Okay.
Yeah, same
Isn't that
house.
nice? Yeah.
Poor
Yeah.
little old house needs a lot of attention at the moment.
Well, is there anything else that we haven't covered that you would like to share before we sign off?
I'd like to talk about,
Sure.
way back then, we used to have the baseball leagues, the town baseball
Oh, sure.
league.
Yes, that
Now,
was
did your
quite
dad
something.
play on that?
Yes, he did actually.
Yes, I thought he did. Now,
Yeah.
your dad is was Sonny, right?
Sonny Russell, yes.
I remember him.
Yes,
Yeah.
Yeah, he loved the baseball, yes.
Yeah, one
Yeah.
of our Sandwich Town heroes.
I don't know about that, but he loved it.
Yes,
Yeah.
he was.
Yeah.
A circus came to town once and was...
Oh.
A circus came to town once in
yeah.
Sandwich. and
It did.
In back there where they played the baseball,
Yeah.
you know.
At the,
And we
at the
used to go
casino?
up there.
Yes, the
Oh, it
casino,
did?
Yeah, yeah.
We used to go up and watch the ball games.
At the
It was a
casino?
big thing, yeah.
Yep.
I think I went skating once at the casino before it was torn down?
Well, it was all closed up for a long
Yeah, I
while,
know.
and then they
I
tore
know.
it down.
I think I went there once skating when I was a kid.
They held a lot
And
of
then, of
functions
course,
at that old casino, didn't they?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
4th of July, we always had the fireworks at
Yes.
Were you? They still have them when you were a kid?
Yes, they did. I can remember doing that, sitting up on the big hill,
Yeah.
across from Shawm Pond, Shawm Lake, and having the fire.
cemetery.
And of course, they've started the fireworks up again.
Have they?
Yes, last year. This past year was the first time
At
where
the
they
same
started-
spot?
Yeah, at the same spot. Yes,
Oh.
isn't that something?
Oh,
That was
my.
quite a treat for us, though,
I can
wasn't it?
remember we used to go down there, and Ginny was a little gal, and
Yeah.
Daddy'd carry her down the street where you'd park at the school, and you'd have to walk down.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a big thing in Sandwich.
Well, it was.
Wasn't it?
was,
Yes.
Yeah. And then I remember the Memorial Day parades.
Yeah.
Where that was a big thing too. All those little kids at the tail end of the parade, and then you'd march down to the drugstore, and they'd give you a free ice cream.
Free ice cream.
But I remember when the men came from the base over
Yes.
there and marched, and you just want to cry.
In the parade.
It was
Yeah.
so wonderful.
Yes.
The
And the
spirit of it
bands.
all.
Remember the bands were
yeah.
just
The
wonderful.
band
Yeah.
concerts.
Yes.
Well, on the Memorial Day parade, I remember, if the weather was good, that was the first day Mom would take us to the beach.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah.
And she'd push the baby carriage down the boardwalk.
Whoever with the newest baby.
We were not in our bathing suits, but we could take our shoes and stockings off and wade and play around on the beach. That was a big thing.
And
Summer
inevitably,
had come.
inevitably, when Mother would come with us, and she'd make sandwiches and everything, and she'd make the cucumber sandwiches.
Oh, yeah.
And you know how you bite up and it slip out, you know, and somebody would inevitably drop their sandwich and poor mother
Into the sand, yeah.
in the sand.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I
And then
was-
also, I was around when the bridges opened over the canal, the new bridges.
And that would be about like 35, 1935,
yeah,
Vivian,
1935.
yes.
And I can remember piling in the car. Piling in the car at our house was always kind of an iffy thing because I'll have to digress. When my father sold lobsters, my mother in the summer, things were pretty flush. We had some money coming in. And my mother would have to always save a certain amount of that money so that my dad could get started again the next spring, getting his boat ready and getting, he'd usually buy a lot of
ropes and things.
rope
yeah.
and laths and things just
He
to
made
build
it.
some more pots. He
Sure.
built all his own pots. And he had to have some money to start up again. So she'd tuck that away. So, what was I talking about?
The bridges. The bridges.
Oh,
Yes,
yeah.
yes.
So he'd have to have a car, a truck, an old truck. It was an old truck usually, and I mean old. And it was in the days when you registered your car every year, but you could prorate it by the month. And so he would wait till, say, the end of March or 1st of April before he put the car on the road. And then he'd take it off again after he got all his pots back in the yard.
Sure.
Yeah. And of course, it usually was not clean and quite often smelled because of the bait and all that
Of
stuff.
course.
So it was not a car that you'd take to go pleasure riding, you know. Oh dear. Anyway, I can remember he'd take his lobsters. At one point, he was taking his lobsters up to Buzzards Bay. Captain, Captain?
I'm not sure, but it was a fish market.
Big fish market up there. And there'd be room for 2 kids in the car, you know, to go around for the ride. And we kept a good count of whose turn it was to go for that ride, you know. Because on the way home, you'd stop at the what was it?
Next door or something.
The big place where you get ice cream.
Oh, like a
Howard Johnson's
Dairy
what
Queen?
came.
Or,
no, it was before that.
yes.
I forgot what the
But
name
you'd get
was.
an ice cream.
But you'd get an ice cream
Oh,
cone,
boy.
yeah.
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 So you made sure you got, when it's your turn, you were there. But anyway, he took us up to the bridge for the
For the celebration?
celebrations.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I can remember being up
Is
there.
that where
And-
Bert got
and
his head stuck?
Bert, my brother, he was number what? Number 5? Yeah. No, number 4. But Bert was just a little fella, and he somehow got put his head through some of these metal things along the way, a fence type thing.
Oh.
And then he couldn't get it out. You know, he'd get out.
Oh, my
gosh.
gosh.
They thought they were going to take the whole bridge down to get his
We
head
thought
out
they'd
of
have
there.
to turn the bridge down to get Bert out.
Oh, so this is in the structure of the bridge. He put,
Yeah.
yes, he put his little head through. Oh, boy. I can see why you remember that.
I wanted to tell you about the 4th of July.
Oh, yes.
Arlene and Penny Bushman decided they were going to make a boat, you know, to come down.
Oh,
And
sure.
They decorated it all up and they started down. Well, it leaked. By the time they got down to where they were having the music, they were up to their waist in water, laughing away.
Oh, a leaky boat. Yeah, yeah. Oh, boy. Yeah.
Oh, dear.
Oh, jeepers. Yeah.
And I'm thinking of this World War II. Also, we would buy stamps. I don't know if they were green or not, but they were like 10 cents a piece
Okay.
to help in the war efforts.
War effort, yes.
And they would have war bonds, and then they were asking for people to bring. Let's see.
The lad and
Yes. Wait a second,
And,
They collected quite a few things, didn't they? They collected like tin and
Yeah.
rubber and
aluminum. Like you
aluminum.
made aluminum.
Yes.
Yeah,
and-
aluminum.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And that
foil.
type of thing for the parachutes,
Milkweed.
milkweed, yes.
Oh, yes.
We did that too.
Yeah. So you collected them. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because that's what they made the parachutes out of.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh,
Boy. Well, I have to tell you, this has been such
Been fun,
a
hasn't it?
charming time to spend with you both. A lot of these stories, of course, many of them, most of them, I didn't even know about. And I'm sure the people that listen to our videotape will be so interested in hearing about all these stories. It was quite a time in Sandwich, wasn't it? It was a nice
It was a
time to
nice
grow up.
town,
They
yeah.
weren't always easy times, but it was a nice time. Yes, yeah.
I forgot to tell you at the gatherings at the post office every night, waiting for the last mail.
Oh.
That was,
Your mother would send you up to the post office?
oh, well, she didn't have to send me up because that's where the boys were.
Oh. So up you went. Yeah, yeah. Oh.
Quite often it was
Yeah.
either.
Who were some of the
it was either on the way to choir rehearsal or to the library anyway,
Yes.
or to the community center that they had it there for a
Who
while.
were some of the boys, Vivian?
Oh, well, most of the guys that
Your
we went to
age.
school with anyway.
can you
yeah,
remember? Yeah,
yeah, like let me think.
Yeah.
Bruno Santoni and Herbie George and George Lambert and Leon Pizzotti and Walter Fish and Blake Norris and all those kids, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Great
That was a great social thing too.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I can remember when I was a little younger, going to school, church, and you people would take us by the hand and take us up there and everything. And Miss Mary Hoxie, did you know her?
No, I
at
recognize
town?
the name, yes.
She was our kindergarten teacher, and when I started going, she would play the piano, and she always taught us, Jesus loves me, this I know.
Oh,
you know,
yes.
And we would remember that.
Yes.
But if you got there early, you could play in, there was a table that they had the sides built up on, and they put beach sand in there, so you could play, and they had little cars and everything. Well, I got overcome with that little car and put it in my pocket and brought it home. And I was so scared all week that Mother would find it and get after me. So I put it back in my pocket the next week and brought it
And
back.
put it back.
So I learned a little bit about sin. I won't do that again.
Now, what church was that?
The Federated Church.
The first church?
Well,
The Federated Church.
the Federated Church.
That's what it was
there,
called,
that
yes.
They made it into a home, a house or something.
Yes,
there.
yeah, yeah. Oh my
Oh,
gosh,
and
yes.
I have to tell you this one. At Sunday school at the Federated Church, after you got to be what? Fifth grade, everybody got a Bible for their own self, their own Bible. And so you used to take your Bible to Sunday school every time you went. I can remember when the kids were little, I kind of felt like an old mother hen with all these little kids going to taking them to Sunday school. And there was one kid in town who was kind of fresh, Bobby Swift, and he used to run up and back of you and run up your heels so your shoes would come off, you know, or else he'd come up and pull your hat off and throw it up on a tree or something like that. It used to be, and I complained to Mom about it. He was bothering the younger kids.
Yes.
So she said to me, well, why don't you turn around and smack him in the nose? Which doesn't sound like Mother at all. But anyway, so the next time he did it, coming home from Sunday school, I was right at Russell's Corner there, waiting for the light to change, and it had been snowing or raining or something, and there was these big mud puddles right down there. And along comes Bobby Swift running up and back of the kids in back of me. And I took Mother's advice. I turned around and I smacked him in the nose. But in doing so, I dropped my Bible and it went in a mud puddle, went into one of those puddles. So I am evidently always reminded now when I see that Bible, because some of the pages are all puckered, you know.
You still have it.
That's
Isn't that
reminder,
wonderful?
yeah. I
Yeah.
still have it. I don't use it. I got the different one now.
Yes, but it's
revised
really-
version. But
Sure. Isn't it?
every time
And
I
this
see
is
that,
the,
I think of Bobby Swift. Bobby Swift became a good friend of my two brothers later. He was on the what? He joined the Navy and was on what? The Lexington?
I'm not sure.
Or the Enterprise?
They were older than me.
Either one of those.
Yeah.
Was badly damaged.
oh
in one
dear,
of the-
oh dear, dear.
In one of the wars.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I forgot which one. I think he's passed along now.
Now, the church
Yeah.
you're speaking of is the church that is across from the library.
Yes.
Yes, that
Yeah.
was your church, yeah, yeah.
You know?
Yeah, from being in Sunday school, we went right into singing in the choir
Yes.
Yeah,
with
yeah,
Mrs. Lloyd and
yeah.
Sarah Bradley. And
Oh,
some
yes.
of Sarah was always getting us going, laughing and fooling, and Mrs. Lloyd would be quite upset.
She'd be
you
quite
know.
stern,
Yes.
yes. Yeah, those are great old sandwich names, yes, yeah.
I sang in the choir there for 9 years. And I got married and I sang in the Marston's Mills Methodist Church for 20 years. And then we merged with Osterville, so I sang in the Osterville Methodist Church for 40 years.
Oh my God.
I've been a choir singer most of my life, and I'm not doing it anymore because of my knees.
Yeah.
But I can't sing
Not-
the way
not
I
your
used
voice,
to.
yeah.
I can't sing the way I used to.
Oh, you probably
But I
can't.
miss it. I really do miss it.
I bet you do
It
after
was-
all those years,
It
of
wasn't
course.
just the singing, it was the
The camaraderie.
Yeah, I was
Yes.
just trying to think how to say
Yes.
that word.
Yeah.
It was that too. We
The
had
friendships you
lots
made.
of fun. I don't know where all those years went.
Yeah. I know, that's
Gone
the big
there.
puzzle. Where did the years go?
Gone they are. I'm 92.
Well, thank you again. This has been so pleasant.
It
I hope
has
you
been fun.
I hope you
was
had a
thinking
nice time
loads
too.
about it.
I know they were a little, maybe not
Jittery.
scared, a little jittery. Scared is too big a
Yeah.
word, but you did wonderful.
Well, I don't
you
know
did
that
wonderful.
we kind of hopped around. skipped
Oh, it's
around
wonderful.
and
The
everything,
stories
but-
that you told are just wonderful. It's just what we want. I want to thank you for coming, and we'll close now. Thank you for watching Tell Me a Story. We'll be catching up with other Sandwich Town people and continuing our series so that as we build up our library of oral interviews, we'll start to get a glimpse of what Sandwich was like way back, sometimes generations ago. So goodbye for now.